the same way that we do.
Joe is wife from Texas. Louisiana. New Orleans. New Orleans. And his talk is called Types of Aliens and Extraterrestrial Contacts. Joe is the International Director of ICAR, International Community for Alien Research. He is also the owner of the Paranormal Radio Network, and he will tell us about the different types of aliens that he and his team have found in some of his 12,000 investigations, along with the different types of contacts people have encountered. Are ETs in your neighborhood? Would you know who they are or what they look like? Think again. You may be surprised. All right, Joe, welcome.
Well, thank you, Pat. I appreciate the interview. And I am International Director for the International Community for Alien Research. I'll give you all a little spew on who we are. We are the largest UFO organization in the world, on average 15 times larger than MUFON, with 25,000 members. Wow. We have more than 12,500 abduction cases. And we're a little bit different than everybody else in the field. We do things, first off, we're very strict on what we consider to be legitimate information. And the organization has now been doing a comparison study for 11 years on contactees. Now, it all started, I was with MUFON for about 10 years with Walt Andrews. I was a senior field investigator for him. But Walt was really a nuts and bolts ufologist, as most people should know, if you're familiar with him. He's a very nice guy, good friend of ours, also a member of the International Community for Alien Research. But we were looking to do abduction studies, not MUFON's bag of tips. MUFON is really a UFO organization, so I was getting a little disenchanted, couldn't get anything going, was getting aggravated, got together with a group of MUFON directors. We did a comparison study on about 4,600 cases that we had on file. We had pulled from a bunch of different organizations. Went through it and we created what we call abduction criteria, which actually I'll be discussing tomorrow in the 303 lecture. But that got us the foundation for who and what we are. That's what got us started. It allowed us to start going through and saying, okay, we know the Greys are going to do this, the reptilians are going to do this, the humans are going to do this, the human beings are going to do this. The reason I really wanted... Oh, yeah, that's not a problem. The reason why I wanted to do types of aliens first is most people are familiar with the Greys. When I talk to people in general, they don't really know about the light beams. They're not sure about the little brown guys. Many people know about Charles Hall's tall whites. It's just not things that you hear and feel that often. But there's also a lot of misnomers. So I think what we're going to do, we'll start with the least known, or the ones with the least amount of information on them. I don't know how many people are familiar with the light beams. It's a poor description when we say light beams. They're more along pure energy, might be a better way of describing them. As far as we know, there's no physical technologies involved with this race at all. They seem to be able to move through time and space freely without any efforts. And if they are truly transforming aliens, it's them. They seem to be able to take any shape they want at any time they want. They're also the masters of the Greys. See, everybody always assumed the Greys work for the humans, or the Greys work for the reptilians, or so on and so forth. We learned about 15 years ago the Greys are much more advanced than either the reptilians or the human race. And I mean much more advanced. Probably in the order of 500 million, 800 million years more advanced than the other two races. And we found this out because of military abduction research, believe it or not. Myself, Randy Copain, Melinda Wesley, and a few others that I work with, we started realizing that when the reptilians or the humans were seen with the Greys, they always gave way to the Greys. In other words, if there was a Grey present and there was humans and reptilians, they were stepping out the way. It didn't matter if it was the 3-foot Greys, the 6-foot Greys, the 9-foot Greys, it just didn't matter. They were getting out of their way. There was definitely fear there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. All the contactees described it the same way. They said when the Greys were present, all the races, including humans, meaning us, all showed an abnormal amount of fear when it came right down to it. And so that was just to kind of get you out of the way they are. As you can see on here, it says ICAR, which I told you about. UFO Undercover is a show I host on Wednesday nights. And we do discuss all this material with pretty much anybody who's anybody in the field. Matter of fact, most of the ufologists these days I'm friends with. I also do own the Paranormal Radio Network. I'm sure a lot of y'all are familiar with John Greenwald Jr. He's one of our hosts. Karen Dolman is one of our hosts. Yeah. Alfred Weber is one of our hosts. We have several actually affiliates. Tim Banal is another one of the affiliates that work for the station. Right now we have about 40 live programs dealing with variety, as I like to call it, because they like to talk about politics and God. Also, we have UFO type shows, which I host, and my national director, Dee Andrew, hosts what's called Eye to the Sky. She does nuts and bolts ufology and UFOs and things like that. And then we have the more controversial programmer, we'll call it, like a friend of mine, Paul Price Richard, who hosts the Prophecy Chronicles. It's a very, very interesting thing in itself. But before we get into this, the station's there for everybody. It's absolutely totally free. It costs nothing to listen to it. You can find it at paranormalradionetwork.com. That's our home site. .org is our archive site. I think right now there's about 2,000 hours of free archives there from you name who they are, they're on those archives. The archive I just recently did with Travis Walton, if you haven't heard it, you should really listen to it. He actually talks about stuff he has never discussed in public before. There are several big ufologists that actually in the last year decided to share with me things that they have never discussed in public before. Also, there's one with Stanton Friedman that we did, not on ufology, mind you, but on what he used to do for a living when he used to work on nuclear aircraft. It's a very interesting interview, and it really gives people an idea of how aliens might be traveling. Coupled with the Michio Kaku interview I did shortly after that, it really lends credence to the physics of star travel, which is something we try to do. We try to legitimize this as much as possible, but getting back to what I was originally talking about. When dealing with the light beings, the Greys tend, I don't know how to explain it, but it's their demeanor. The little 3-foot Greys, I guess we'll call them the 3-foot Greys. By the way, while I'm on this subject, Greys are not gray. In case y'all did not know that, they're not gray. If a contactee walks up to you and tells you they've seen a gray alien, you might as well tell them go home. Then they haven't seen a real alien, it's something else entirely. They're kind of, I don't know if y'all are familiar with cobalt, electric blue. And the reason they are is, we found this out after about 15 years of research. The Greys absorb their food. They absorb it through their skin. It's something we learned very early on in our research. They actually absorb it. Well, they eat, or they absorb, whatever you would call it. It's a blue plasma. Now, the blue plasma we found out thanks to contactee research, because the contactees kept having this problem with this weird blue. But what's important about this is, when a Grey first eats, his skin color is a deep cobalt blue. Now, as a few days go by, the color of his skin starts to fade. So you'll start getting a more of a light blue, and then almost, I hate to say clear, but it's almost a translucent color. So it kind of does give them a grayish, whitish, strange little hue until they refeed again. Also, the Greys are, I think there's 9 varieties that we've categorized now. There's the 2 short Grey varieties, which the people like to call the helpers of the workers. Well, one of those Greys seems to be cyborg, or at least half human, or half Grey and half machine. The other Greys are just totally alive like we are, very advanced, much stronger than we are. It always cracks me up that people wonder how a little 3-foot Grey could take a guy my size, I'm 250 pounds, and drag me out of my house. Even if you knock me out, I'm still a 250-pound guy. This is a little Grey, this big. I mean, come on, let's be honest about it. They're quite strong, quite a bit stronger than I am. They have a tendency, I don't know if y'all have seen the movie or the TV series Taken. There's a particular clip in there when contactees see it that really freaks them out. You'll actually see the Greys. They'll start to move up the sides of the walls, move on top of the ceilings. It's a very freaky thing. The first time I seen it, it shivers up my spine. I was like, oh, okay, that really hit, you know. By the way, I am a contactee, but it really did send shivers up my spine. And that was a kicker for a lot of people. Well, we realized that they don't have physical bones the way we do. They're more of a cartilage type alien. And they're very powerful. And their military abilities far exceed anything that humans will probably reach for another 500 or 600 million years. We're nowhere in their ballpark. It always cracks me up when people tell me that, well, you can do this with the Grey. You can do no, it's not true. The Greys are so far beyond us that literally it will take us at least 100 million years to catch up with them. They're well beyond where we are. They've been here for 10,000 plus years, and they've been doing this unabated for that long, and they're going to do it for another 10,000 years unabated, because frankly, there is nothing or anyone on this planet that can stop them. Not at this time. Maybe 10,000, maybe 100,000, maybe a million. Depends on us. Or actually, I guess I should say it depends on them as well. Where we're going to end up with this. They're, like I said, they're very powerful, very strong, and they seem. Everybody always says they don't have emotions. Well, that's not really true. The Greys do have emotions. They don't show them often, but they do get angry. We've had at least 100 contactees now talk about them getting angry. Most of y'all are probably familiar with what they call the reward and punishment program for what we call advanced contactees or keepers. These are people that are kind of working with the Greys, for a lack of a better way of explaining it. And they do reward and punishment. If you do something good, you get to keep your memories. You go home, not too much bad stuff happens to you. You're on your merry way. You don't, you're going to pay for it. It's usually not a physical punishment. It's usually a mental punishment. And it's usually something that takes you some time to get over. Most contactees tell me when it happens, it usually takes them a week to 2 weeks just to get it out of their head. No one can ever put into words what's actually in their head, but it takes them that long to get the emotional strain back to where they can actually become a productive member of society again, which is a very strange thing itself. Now, a friend of mine, Jim Sparks, I'm sure a lot of y'all are familiar with Jim. This is something we discuss on a regular basis. Jim told me one time that he could remember 95% of his abductions. Pretty good, huh? I mean, 95%? Jim's older. He's in his 50s now. Now, I put this to him. This is something that everyone needs to think about if they're going to do this kind of research. He was getting abducted weekly, sometimes daily. You figure 2 hours a day, times 30 days, 60 hours a month, times... It's about 700 hours a year, times 10 years. That's 7,000 hours. Now, he's a lifelong abductee, which means he's somewhere in the 40 to 50,000 hour range in abductions. There's no way he's retaining that kind of memory, ever. There's no way any contactee retains that kind of memory. It simply doesn't happen. It's a very strange thing because people just assume they hear something, they're like, oh, well, that sounds good. Well, no, stop, think, do the research. Come right down to it. See how long an average abduction lasts. Is it an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours? How many times does a person get abducted? That's important for people to understand because that's really, which I'll get into more tomorrow in the 303, but it is something they need to understand. But so you have the 3-foot ones who are doing most of the experiments. The 5 to 6 foot ones, which are about yay tall, they're funny. They're gray, they're white, and they're brown. Now I say gray meaning the blue. It's just unfortunate the gray just pops out of my mouth. But they are about 5.5 foot on average. They have 4 fingers, and as far as I can tell, not in the post-plethora from anything anybody's told us. And they seem to be, I guess you could call them the keepers, the middle guys. They kind of keep an eye on what the little grays are doing, but they're also assigned to each group of contactees. What's funny about this is we learned that contacts happen in family lines. They go back for generations. We know now that contacts will span an entire family. You can go back 10, 15,000 years. What's most interesting about this is a lot of times the same gray that abducted your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother is the same gray abducting you. So they're quite familiar with your family. They're quite familiar with what your breaking points are. They're quite familiar with a lot of things, actually. And as best I can tell, it's almost virtually impossible to get them to stop doing anything. Now, they do have a rule, though. They'll take, like, siblings. Let's say if there's 2 brothers, 2 sisters. They'll go into the family, they'll abduct all 4 of them. Usually pre-birth. Bring them back, do the whole 9 years. Usually 2 or even 3 of them will get dropped. They won't abduct them anymore. They'll just drop them. They're not what they're looking for. The other thing that's important about that is, and this is something no one really thinks about, is everybody interbreeds. I'm talking about us. If you're a great contactee, you marry someone who's a reptilian contactee, y'all have children, that child marries someone who's a human contactee, you have just created a new species. Now this is happening on a regular basis. So at this particular point, we're not sure where anybody is as far as how far advanced we are actually from them. It gets really complicated, but each generation you're getting more inbreeding between the contactee groups, the 3 major contactee groups. They're breeding with each other now. And it's not hybrids. It's not anything the aliens are doing. The aliens originally started it. Now these people are finding each other on their own and doing this. And it's creating for a very interesting group of people. But like I said, we'll get into that more tomorrow. But getting back to the 5 to 6 foot aliens, they do tend to really keep an eye on everything. They like to know everything that goes on all the way around. And I would imagine because, from what we've been told, the 6 and 7 footers, I don't want to say they're vicious. They're just, well, let's just say you don't want to disappoint them and leave it at that. That might be a polite way of saying don't hack them off. They can be extremely mean. They can be extremely kind, but they can be extremely mean. And these 3 sizes, and it's kind of weird that the Greys are caste system, meaning they start with the 3 foot, then the 5 foot, the 7 foot. They also seem to go that way in authority. The short guys do not have the skills or the powers that the other guys have. They seem to get a little bit more advanced and have a little bit more skills and a little bit more power as they get taller and higher. They also seem to have a caste system, like a hive system. We found over the years that there is at least one person or one being in charge. I hate to use the word person, but we'll say one being in charge. There does seem to be at least a queen, king, whatever you want to call it. Since no one I know personally has seen him, we're going to say queen for the sake of argument. But as far as I know, no one has ever actually seen her or it or whatever you want to call it. It's just they have had, when contactees are discussing this amongst themselves, they will discuss what the other aliens are talking about. You know, when they're contactees, one of the things we did early on is you can teach a contactee to eavesdrop. It's a real easy thing to do. It's real easy. They don't even mess with contactees unless they're telepathic. No, let me change that. All contactees, if you're truly a contactee, you're empathic. Every contactee is empathic. If you're not empathic, you're not a contactee. It's that simple. If you don't have the empathic ability, don't waste our time. You're just not a contactee. It's one of the prerequisites for being it. Most contactees have advanced telepathic abilities. Some of them learn it, some of them don't. I have no idea. It probably has more to do with how open you are to these things, where you are in your own evolution, and where you're going to see if you're going to ever awaken these abilities. Personally, I know a lot of contactees that use this every day. They use it for abilities. But that's one of the things that these aliens are doing. They're kind of pre-programming us to recognize, at least some of us, to recognize these abilities. And that's really what the big, tall guys are interested in. They're not really interested in your emotional well-being. They're not really interested in your health, even though they will intervene sometimes on health issues. I do have cases where 2 ladies in California, stage 4 cancer, 6 months to live. Get a phone call one night, don't have cancer the next morning. I said, whoa, remission, all right. No, Joe, the doctor said it was gone, never had it. It's impossible. Both of them, same night. Called. Don't know each other, by the way. Either one of them. Don't know each other. Both of them live in California, mind you. One in Northern California, one in Southern California. Got up the next morning, were feeling great, went to the doctor, had the battery test, called me and said, the cancer's gone. And from what the doctor said, there was no damage. All of the cells that were disrupted from the cancer were completely gone. So they do intervene sometimes. But then I also know contactees that have had other problems that they haven't intervened on. So that's one of those arguments. Why would they save this one and not that one? You know, it's a tough thing. I really think that has more to do with where you are on their list of what they need. A lot of people assume that when we're talking about this particular type of alien, that they're here to help us, save us, or hurt us. Now, you judge aliens just like you judge your neighbor. You judge them by their actions. They come take you against your will. They do what they want to do. They put you back. They wipe out your memories. Not a friendly act, not a hostile act. We do this all the time as humans. We take bears on a daily basis, tag them, probe them, take their blood, hang them from things to see how much they are. We're thinking we're doing a good thing. That's what we're thinking. So in the Gray's case, we can't assume that they're evil because they're doing this. All we can assume is they shouldn't do it. They should ask us first. Or at least say, hey, look, I'm coming to your house, just be ready. I'm coming, just have yourself. But no, they don't. So you have to judge them by their actions. And what's most important about this, Greys have been here for at least 6,000 years. They have not destroyed the planet, but they have not saved the planet. Which says this is about them and not about us. And this is a really important lesson. It was hard to learn this even for myself. Because being a human, I want to think this is about me. I'm a human, this is about me. They're taking me, they're doing this. It's not. They need something. It's not so much that they actually need it from us. They just need it. It's going to take time. They're going to work it out. But they're not going to stick their necks on the line for our species. They're not going to stop nuclear bombs from falling. They were here during World War II. I see we nuked the daylights out of Japan. They didn't stop it. I see what went on at 911. I see what's going on in the Middle East right now. They're not going to intervene on our behalf. None of the aliens are going to intervene on our behalf. This is something they want us to correct. I was hoping when we learned about the light beams that we might actually see. You hear about light beams, you're thinking peace, love, light, to hear, hug. That's what I'm thinking anyway. Not sure. They don't seem to be real hostile, but they don't really seem to have an interest in saving us the way we are. Now, by saying that, contactees, this is a big argument, and I should say this from Mara, but this is a big argument on how many people are actually being contacted worldwide. Now, I just got in trouble with this with Alfred Weber and George Nord, but I'll go ahead and go over it. All contactees, all researchers agree on this. Myself, Yvonne Smith, Ray Rodwell, Darrell Sims, all the major researchers, Bud Hopkins, Whitley, a whole bunch of us agree on this. 10 to 15% of the population is being abducted. Okay, doesn't sound like a lot, 10 to 15%. 10% of 6.5 billion is 650 million. Okay, 15% is 1.3 billion. That's a lot of people. In anybody's book, that is a lot of people. And the fact that they're even taking half of that many people and doing what they want, I gotta say, just irritates me. But what irritates me the most is the fact that they come in and they take your kids. And they don't ask you, can I take your son or your daughter? They just take them. And they do what they want, and then they put it back. Now, granted, as far as I can see, with the exception of a couple of missing people cases, in general, you're less for the wear. You're a little sore, a little aggravated, got some emotional problems, but still, they put you back. You're alive, you're kicking, and you're going to live the battle another day. It's an interesting thing in itself, but that is pretty much where the Greys are. They're pretty much in that little ball of wax there. They're running their programs for the light beams, and they consistently, if you go back to, you don't really find them in the Sumerian times, but you do find them in the Egyptian times. Now, what I find interesting about that, and I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit, the Sumerians, which we all know date about 6,600 years, give or take a day or two. The Sumerians talk about a race of humans. Now, I know most of y'all are familiar with the human race. They say they're gorgeous, they're beautiful, long, flowing, blonde hair, pretty. Oh, that's a lie. That's an outright lie. I'll prove it to you. If you go back and look in the Sumerian text and look in the Egyptian hieroglyphs, you will see human aliens, but they don't look like us. They have long heads. They're long this way. Their heads are pruned way up this way. On average, they're about 7.5 to 8 foot tall. They're quite a bit bigger than us. They have bigger eyes that are protruded. They're not what everybody would like to think of the peace, love, and light. It's not what they are. From what I hear, and what most of the ancient text says, this race came to this planet umpteen thousands of years ago. No one can really put a serious date on this, whether it was 6,000 or 600,000. That's up for debate. No one really knows. All we know for sure is the Sumerians say that when human aliens came here, they built 2 great white dome cities because they could not live on this planet. They created a race to stay on this planet, which is not us, by the way. That race, in turn, a couple of thousand years later, decided, and all this, by the way, you can find for yourself. This is all ancient history text. This is nothing. This is all easy stuff to find. They decided that why should we take care of the planet? Why should we mind the planet? We're just as important as these guys who created us, or why bother? They decided to create a race of humans that could do things like plow the field, procreate, have their beards, stuff like that. Nothing of any real consequence. Now, what I find interesting about this, the Christian Bible has the same story. So do most of all of the ancient worlds have the same story. It is the same story wherever you go. You have this human race of aliens, this human race that was running around a planet that was basically dumb. It's not us. I'm not saying that we're brilliant, mind you, but this race was particularly dumb. Well, somewhere along those lines, the Sumerians started talking about this reptilian race that was coming in. By the way, they're not reptiles, they're amphibians. But anyway, they're talking about this race that would come in, take their women, rape the women, and the children that were born were different. Now, the first time I ever read this, I thought, different. Oh, man, they're horrifying. They've got things going on beside their heads. It's not what they meant. They meant that they said no. When the race told them to go plow the field, they said, you go plow the field. We became a self-aware species. The Christian Bible says it better than anybody does. It The serpent gives Eve the apple of life. She bites it first and doesn't get dressed because she realized she was naked. She became self-aware. This is in every ancient culture there is. You will find it in Sumerian text. You will find it in the words of the Dogon. You'll find it in the Aborigines. You'll find it in the Mesoamerican tribes. You'll find it in the Native American tribes. There is no escaping this story. So if you go by that, then it's not the human aliens that are here to help us. They're not the ones that were helping us. They were using us as slaves. The reptilians, on the other hand, or the amphibians, on the other hand, at least thought we should be sentient, at least have a fighting chance. Now, I'm not saying they're here to help us either, to be honest with you, because at this point, I really don't know. But they did seem to have a vested interest in our species. For whatever reason, they decided they were going to help us out, or I should say maybe they were going to help themselves out. By irritating humans, by making us sentient, I'm sure we made somebody's life miserable out there. I can see, 300 or 400 million humans running around that are now going, hey, why do I have to do that? You go do it. Sounds like New York to me, but anyway, we'll move on for that. But still, that's kind of how it was. So you have all this going on, and all of a sudden, about 1,000 years into the Sumerian writings, the Egyptians start to, as the Sumerians wane, the Egyptians start to pop up. And lo and behold, a new race enters. And what we like to refer to as a grace. You will actually find them in hieroglyphs on at least 5 different temples, and at least, I think it's more than 50 of the walls of just different places. The pictures are everywhere. The ones that I find most interesting are the ones where there's crafts next to them. I found those particularly interesting. It also seems that around that time, the Egyptians started becoming a much more advanced society in general. They learned about the stars. They had a much better understanding. And we think, and I'm going to use think here, somewhere in this time, somebody imported us some knowledge, because you have the Great Pyramids, which only line up with Orion at 12,500 years ago. But more importantly, Leo only lines up with Leo at 12,500 years ago. But it gets more involved in that. Angkor Wat only lines up with Drago at 12,500 years ago. The seven statues on Easter Island only line up with the 7 sisters at 12,500 years ago. There's 11 different monuments on this planet that only line up with their respective constellations at 12,500 years ago. Now, that's 7,000 years before the first monument was ever built, which would have been the Sphinx, which would have been the first of all of them. Who knew about precession? Who were teaching these aliens how to go back 6,000 years and build monuments that we could see 6,000 years after that, 12,000 years later, that line up perfectly with their constellations? There's maybe 2-3 people in this whole room that could sit down and work this out. And we're actually quite an advanced species compared to them. But yet, not only did they do that, but they managed to grid the entire planet map with a less than 2% error. That's as good as any computer you use today. And they had little computers doing this. Direct intervention, no doubt about that. I find it interesting because in the Egyptians and the Sumerians, they portrayed the humans, along with the Mesoamericans, as really vicious, really mean people. They were very nasty, very mean, and definitely believed in slavery. And you find this in all the cultures. What I find interesting about it is in all the cultures, they show the reptilians as coming in as the bringers of life, or the bringers of equality. And the Mesoamericans, or especially in the Incans and the Mayans, they're considered the bringer of equality. They actually were the ones that came in and leveled the playing field for whatever reason. And we still, to this day, don't know what the reason is. We can guess about it all day long. We can hope that it was because of us. In reality, I really think it was just to irritate the other ones. Now, what's important about that, and I know I'm skipping on y'all, but one of the things that's important in that is I don't know how y'all have heard of the map of the Creator. It's an interesting map. It dates 120 million years old. 120 million years. We weren't here. This is a fact, by the way. You can look this up. It's still posted on several Russian sites where the archaeologists who found it posted it. It's been reviewed by American archaeologists. The map is 120 million years old. It's an aerial resource map of a valley made 120 million years ago. So somebody 120 million years ago had resources. They could fly over a valley, map the entire valley out, put the resources where they go, and then save this map, put it down, and save it for 120 million years. We don't have that technology today. We couldn't do that today. We could make the maps, and we could create the maps and put the maps where they go, but they would be gone in 120 million years. So here we have this, and the reason I bring this up is because the amphibians, and this is thanks to Harvard, Harvard did a thing where they took a raptor, and they ran the raptor forward about 64, 65 million years. And the raptor was almost identical to one of the amphibians. I mean, almost not perfect, mind you, but really close, really close. So a lot of us now, a lot of the major researchers are now thinking that more than likely the amphibians are native to this planet. They're not. It may be more that we're the intruders than they're the intruders. And that might be one of the reasons why so much of this stuff is going on here. Think about it like this. They're amphibians. The planet is 78% water. Now, why would a sentient species like us evolve on a planet like this? We're inhabiting less than 24% of the planet. And we're not even really inhabiting that. We're inhabiting, when it comes right down to it, as a species, we inhabit less than 11% of this planet. Don't sound like the dominant species to me. The dominant species would have 75 to 80% of the planet. It's not us. It makes you have to stop and wonder, whoa, wait a minute. Here's some other little tidbit facts for you. The human biological clock is set to 24 1/4 hours. Earth's days are 23 3/4 hours. Any reason why that would happen? Optimal body temperature for a human is 63.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Not this planet. So what is this? And this is science fact. There's no escaping this. This is all stuff you can look at, like the reptilian section of our brain. This is all, none of this is science fiction. This is all fact. It's all based in fact. It's real easy to find, and it's real easy to look up. So you have to wonder, where are we really from? Is this really our home? Or are we the squatters? Now, I ask this to people all the time when I'm doing these lectures. Let me say, usually since you're in the front row, let's say you inherit 50 acres of land in California. You look like a nice person. You go out to California, you're going to build this big house out there, you're going to move out of your land. You go out there and you find a bunch of people living on your land. You going to let them keep it? You're going to say, y'all can live here and be nice? Yeah, that's right. You're going to kick them off. So now we have 3 major aliens visiting this planet, with one of them that seems to have a claim to our planet. I'm getting a little tad bit worried. I'm getting just a little worried here that these aliens may have an agenda that may not appease everybody on this planet. It may be something that's, it's not that it's so much dark, it really just comes down to, we were a created race, and there's actually DNA evidence now to back that up. There's 2 genetic studies that came out. One that cites the 4,000 pieces of junk DNA in the human body, which, by the way, is 88% more than any other animal on the planet. 88% more. Don't sound like we naturally evolved. Sound like there were some issue problems there. It sounds more like a created species. So, do we actually have a claim to Earth? That's what it comes down to. Do we have a claim to this planet? Or are we just 6 billion ants running around waiting for the exterminator to come along? At this point, we really don't know. We really don't. I'm hoping that if any of this is correct, that they're going to say, well, they're not that bad. Let's at least keep some of them. And, and really when you talk about this, and I shouldn't touch on this because I really was saving this for tomorrow, but there's a thing called the Holocaust dream that runs in contactees. 1/3 of all of our contactees have this dream. What's scary about this 1/3 is we have never published this anywhere. I barely talk about it at lectures, and these dreams are vivid. I mean, they are vivid. They are detailed. People will tell you, like the one lady was telling me about the one in Houston. She said all the buildings were intact, everything was intact, but there was military just rolling bodies in by the thousands, just with dumpsters. But there was no damage in these cities. The cars were in the streets. Pretty much what they described as a pandemic. A very nasty pandemic that probably takes about 2/3 of the population. Now, you don't need aliens for us to do something stupid like that, let's be honest. I mean, we're building biological weapons all the time, so maybe they know something we don't. Maybe they know we're going to mess up. It's going to be their opportunity to take over. Maybe they're planning on doing it themselves. Maybe they want to see how we react to disasters like that. I mean, I have noticed one thing for sure. When there are major catastrophes, aliens tend to show up. Maybe we're like sport to them. Maybe they just want to watch and see how humans deal with certain problems. Or maybe they're just trying to figure out, oh, God, these guys are dumb. How do they survive? It's a tough call, but at this point, it is something that we're steadily looking into. Now, going back to the amphibians, and they are amphibians. All the contactees described, they look like lizards, by the way. probably 6.5, 7 foot tall. The big males, or the mature males, are probably in the 7 foot tall range. 300 to 400 pounds. They're big. They're big. They're big. The mature males are the only ones that have tails, and then the rest of them have tails, except for the mature females. And when we say mature, this is probably 5 to 10,000 years old. These are not your average run-a-day little children that are running around. The reason I bring this up is because I tell contactees out, because somebody had said something earlier when Pete was talking that got me thinking about this. One of the things we tell reptilian contactees is the immature males, the ones that are 5 or 6 foot tall, they're very aggressive. They're kind of crazy is what they are. But you can't tell them no. I don't know if they probably wouldn't stop abducting you, but they may stop doing what they're doing, because they are extremely aggressive. I've had at least 100 contactees tell me they like to lock them in the room with the kids. There'll be 10, 15 of the little amphibians around, and they'll throw a woman or a man in there with them sometime to see how the human's going to react. Well, they're a much different society than we are. But it's not so much that they're a violent society, but they do things differently than we do. So they expect you to be commanding and say, stop. Knock it off quick. But you can't just go, oh, stop. Because they're not going to stop. You've got to be convinced. From what everybody tells me, it's more of it's more that you're projecting the energy, is a better way of saying it. You're projecting it through your mind. You're just projecting it. And they'll stop. Now, I'm not going to tell you they're going to stop abduction. I know a lot of people say they stop their abductions. I've got to tell you this. Everyone I have ever regressed that said they have stopped their abductions were still being abducted. Everyone, to date. There has been no one that has passed the regression test, not one. A lot of people, including Darrell Sims, which hates me right now because of this, but actually we're friends. But I put him on the spot a couple of years ago. I said, Darrell, you said you stopped your abductions. Let me regress you. Oh, no, Joe. You ain't regress. Come on, Darrell. I've interviewed you like 15 times. Come on, Darrell, come on. So he said, well, I can let you regress you. I said, well, then you have to admit that it's possible you're still being taken. I said, they're taking your son and your grandson. Why aren't they taking you? I said, are you useless to them? It ain't because you're hunting, because they're sure not scared of you, Darrell. Come on. I said, dude, they can disappear you in a second. And this is a key point. How many people here think they can stop a military abduction? Most of y'all are familiar with MILABs. Anybody think they can stop a military abduction? This is what cracks me up. If you can't stop a military abduction, how in the world are you going to stop an alien abduction? Because they are way more advanced than we are. Now, they will stop. Most of the time, what they will do is just not let you remember anymore. So as far as you're concerned, yes, the abductions did stop. But in reality, no, they didn't stop. They're still doing it. They're just knocking it out of your head, so there's no more reason for you to fight or argue about it anymore. It's a scary thing in itself. And I have noticed, too, that the human aliens and the amphibians, they will kind of bend to your will somewhat. The Greys just don't. The Greys have I guess if we had to pick a hypothetical or a race that we've seen on TV, maybe the Vulcans might be a good description. They do have emotions. The Greys are an emotional race. They're just very controlled. But let me tell you what, I know a few times where they have gotten furious because contactees did stuff that, frankly, they weren't supposed to. But I also do know that they want communicators out there. I know Catalina Wilson personally. She's a friend of mine. Leah Haley's a friend of mine. These are people they want speaking on a regular basis. There are several contactees out there right now that are speaking. Now, I'm not going to tell you everything that the contactee is telling you is true, because it's probably not. There's probably a good bit of misinformation in it. Not intentionally, mind you. They're not doing it intentionally, but you can only interpret what you see. You know, I mean, we're limited to our education and the way we were raised. So when you're on board one of these ships and all this stuff is going on, this is an interpretation, is what you're speaking about. And some of it's quite close, some of it's not even in the ballpark. But they want people to be familiarized with them. They want this to become an open forum topic, at least amongst us. I hate to say this, but I don't think they care about what we term the norms now. I really don't. I think they're interested in their 1 billion to 2 billion contactees they have on this planet, and the other 4 billion, well, c'est la vie. I don't think they're interested in them. Because people ask me all the time. Matter of fact, Stephen Bissett and I debate this all the time. Why won't there be disclosure? Well, because it's been disclosed. The ET is disclosed to everybody they want to disclose to. Every contactee knows there's aliens on this planet, and frankly, that is all the aliens are worried about. They don't care if the average person knows, they just don't. It's not something that matters to them in any shape, form, or fashion. All they're interested in is what we're doing, what they're doing, and what's going to come out of this. That's all they're really interested in. Unfortunately, we're stuck in there. You know, it's a strange little pestering thing anyway. But anyway, moving on. I want to go back to the amphibians because I love talking about them. As a race, we do know things like they do have a religion. Seems to be a single religion. Doesn't seem to be a multitude of religions. We know they can be very aggressive. We also know they abduct in family lines, but a little bit differently than the Greys do. The Greys abduct in family lines, meaning from the first point of contact. Whenever the first point of contact was with your family, the Greys continue to abduct in that family line, unless that family line becomes useless, which does happen sometimes. Reptilians are different. The amphibians, when they originally interbred with this population 10,000, 100,000 years ago, whenever it was, they created their own family lines. They are abducting inside their family lines. Any reptilian contactee is born with genetic memory. Their whole species is done that way, from the bottom up. The daddy, the grandpa, and on down. The material is just handed over. Every time one dies or one's born, the new one gets the information. Now imagine it takes some time to assimilate that much information because they're a very old race. But it does work like that. The way we found out about it was through the contactees. We have these contactees, we're having all these wild dreams and having all these recall and all this recollection on like different libraries of hooded aliens, of rituals and stuff like that. And at first, when I get one or two cases, I'm like, okay, whatever. We'll document it and keep it until we find something that matches it. When you start getting in the 300, 400, 500 case range, then you can start taking it serious. Then you can say, okay, there is something physically going on here that we need to look into. Well, what we found is the human cannot access the full genetic memory, but they can access bits and pieces of the genetic memory. At first, we thought these were abductions. We thought they were being abducted, and this is what they were seeing in abduction. But the timelines weren't right. Some of the times when they were seeing this stuff was back 6, 7, 8,000 years. So they were seeing images from like the great-great-grandfather of one of the reptilians. That's what they were seeing. Well, we didn't. It took us a little time to figure that out. Now we understand that. So technically, an amphibian, if you're being abducted by an amphibian, you're related to them, is what it comes down to. You're sharing common DNA with this species. And the reason I bring that up is because they're very funny. The big males will come into a room. If you're related to them, the way they mate and breed is they just do whatever they want at the time. Well, for human women, not a good thing. For human men, not a good thing. That's forcible rape in our society. In their society, no, it's not. It's the way they do things. But from what we've heard, if a woman is forceful or a man is forceful, and I mean forceful, I don't mean you have to kick them in the head or anything, but you've got to mean it, they'll stop. And it's generally just the big males you have to worry about this with, but I have heard occasionally that the little immature males will try to, I guess, it's like when a kid going through puberty. It's the same thing. But they tell you to be forceful. What's really weird about this is they have a way, because this is what really bothered me about this whole scenario. We try to stay out of these areas when we're doing research. What really bothered me is half the women said it was rape. The other half said it wasn't. Same scenarios now. Same exact thing going on. So I'm thinking, well, what am I missing here? I mean, somebody comes in, grabs you, does what they want. Okay, I don't see. Well, come to find out, the males, the mature males and the mature females have a way of, I guess it's an empathic energy. They just kind of portray onto you. So whatever they're feeling, you start to feel. Well, of course, they're enjoying themselves, so they're relaying that straight to you. So after a while, it just becomes a thing. Now, what's really funny about it is I actually have contactees now that tell me that they miss it. It's one of the things that floors me. It really throws me for a loop. But hey, you got to take the information for what it is. So we see those on a regular basis. When it comes to the human aliens, or I should say the second race of the human aliens, because the first ones can't breathe our atmosphere, they tend to be aggressive with both species on this planet. Or I should say with both males and females on this planet. The females are very aggressive to male men on this planet, and the men are very aggressive to females on this planet. It's something that goes on in contact on a regular basis. It doesn't go on for everybody. It's not going to happen to everybody. Maybe 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 100. I'd actually have to sit down and count. But it does happen, and it is something that we do see on a regular basis. So those kind of things we incorporate into our research, because somewhere along the line this is driving a point to something that we're looking for, something that we're trying to understand, something we want to know. Not so much what the aliens want to know, but what we want to know. Also, too, I don't know how long most of y'all have been doing this. We learned about 10 years ago from my car that the Greys especially changed the way they do abductions. How many of y'all here missing time on a regular basis now? It's hardly ever talked about. There's hardly any missing time ever talked about. Now, for decades, missing time was a sure way to know you had a contactee. Not anymore. They've gotten very, very, very advanced in the way they do things. Also, they don't use cover memories anymore. They use what we call looped memories. They'll go into your head, find something that you do on a daily basis, something mundane, something that you would never even challenge the thought of. They'll take it like something maybe most people's like driving to work, sitting at your desk, just something that you do every day that you're not going to question the memory. And they just loop it. And as far as you're concerned, that's what you did that day. But, like everything in the universe, they do make mistakes from time to time. Every now and then, they'll loop a memory that sets off another memory. Like in one case, they had looped a memory, but they didn't take into consideration that the couple that they looped the memory to had gotten into a fight in that location. So when they looped the memory, the couple got into a fight. And while they were fighting, they realized, well, wait, this is a 10-year-old fight. What are we doing? That's how we would catch on the small things like this. Give you another example. Couple in Pensacola, Florida, left a hotel room, going out to the beach, doing research there, and people we know personally, going out to do some research. Pulled up, parked the car, went out to the beach, did the research, went back. Right? Nothing happened. Right? They get back in the car, they got a ticket. Now you can see the car from the beach, but there's a ticket in the car. The ticket says 10:15. The couple didn't leave the hotel until 11 o'clock. Cop guarantees, got it on videotape. That's when the ticket was issued. The hotel and the 7-Eleven had the couple there at 11:05 and 11:12. But yet, somehow or another, that car and that couple were on that beach at 10:15 and got a ticket. But according to the hotel cameras, they never left the hotel. Now, how in the hell did that happen? Really?
Can you explain?
Yes, actually we can. What they do, the Greys, especially the Greys have they got smart. Maybe it was because of Bart Hopkins. Maybe it was because of David Jacobs. Maybe it was because of one of the other researchers. Somebody out there put enough information out that they said, okay, we've got to change what we're doing. It's time to move on. It's time to change. The Greys tend to remove you from time. You can call it dimensional. You can call it whatever they want. They just step you out to the side. Time is going on. When they step you back in, it may be 10 minutes early, maybe an hour early. It might be the same moment within the time they took you. But they just put you back. Every now and again, we get couples that actually see each other as they're being going back and forth. So they're actually seeing themselves as they're being put back. That would personally freak me out like you wouldn't believe. I'd be like, oh, okay, wait a minute, now, wait. So then I'd start asking questions, and of course they'd get aggravated with me. I'd get one of those penalties they talk about all the time. I have been known to challenge them. Occasionally, it is not a good thing. Sometimes it works. I mean, I get some information every once in a while. Most times, it's something I usually regret. But still, you got to do it. I tell everybody the same thing. I agree with what people were saying earlier. You always have to take the argument that you can stop this and you can fight. Yes, there's going to be repercussions. Yes, there's going to be other things. But the Greys especially, the Greys and reptilians especially, they kind of, I don't want to say they honor, but they kind of respect it. The fact that you're willing to stand up to a race as themselves. So in some cases, they may slack down or lighten up on the contact situation. Some things, but something I'll get into tomorrow is contact goes through stages. From prior to birth, through childhood, into puberty, into your 30s, into your 40s, and into your 50s. And it changes along the way on a regular basis. And the contact actually slows, and in some places almost comes to a complete stop. So a lot of times contactees assume that they're not being abducted anymore because frankly they haven't seen it. They also like to do non-physical abductions and downloads, which is something is also new. The download started about 12, 14 years ago. We started getting contactees that would just be driving along or sitting down watching TV and just bam, all kind of stuff in there. In the psychic world they call them walk-ins. Well, they're not walk-ins because they're still the same person. You know, it's just a much more brilliant person. They have a lot more ability. They understand things a lot better. And it does tend to pop into their heads while they're going along. I always did find that interesting. They'll say that they'll be doing something, all of a sudden, bam, they just know something new. Now, we put this to the test because we like to test contact these people. I'm very skeptical by nature. So we actually put it to the test, and we would take people that would tell us that they had maybe been learning something new, and we would go out and research the subject matter and test them. I was amazed people with 8th grade educations were doing quantum physics. I was amazed by this stuff. I mean, some of this stuff is beyond. Matter of fact, when I was talking with Richard Keiko about this, he was amazed. We got into pretty good in-depth. I think I should catch that interview. That's a good interview. Anybody can get Mitchie Cocky to admit that aliens might be real is a good interview, guys. Trust me. Because he's hardcore, but he's kind of changed his mind these days. But it's a good one, and it does give you a sense that even mainstream, if the argument is presented correctly and not way out there, will accept this. Now, I interviewed him, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Dr. Paul Avalette. They all three were real hardcore against aliens when the interview started. At the end of the interview, they were much softer. As a matter of fact, Michio on Nova did a special on one of the things I brought up to him, which we called genetic. They always talk about having generation ships of travel in space and stuff, but you really don't. All you have to do is understand that it's called the stepping stone theory. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with the stepping stone theory. Build a base on Mars, build a base in Zone 11, build a base on Io, Europa, somewhere out there, put one out in Oort cloud, put one halfway between Proxima Centauri, put one in Proxima Centauri. Now, by saying that, it takes 2 weeks to get to the moon. New technology, about 5 days. New technology will get us to Mars in about 7 months, maybe 6 months. We'll get out to Jupiter in about 2 years. Now, meanwhile, these are established bases. We've got people staying here, living here on a regular basis. Next step is Oort cloud, 2 years out from the base at Io. Next step after that's halfway to Proxima Centauri, another 2 years. Next time after that, Proxima Centauri, another 2 years. Now, we're 4 years. Now, within less than 10 years, we've gone from Earth to Proxima Centauri and has established colonies the entire way. The reason I bring this up is our galaxy is only 100,000 light years across. Sounds like a lot, but we're already 1 million years old, which means we could have crossed this galaxy 5 times already. Now, the Greys are supposedly several billion years old, and the reptilians and the humans are hundreds of millions of years old, which means they've been crossing back and forth against this galaxy literally hundreds of thousands of times. They don't need faster-than-light travel to do this. Even though they do have it, they don't need it. And this is one of the things we bring to mainstream to help, not crowds like us, because we understand this a little better. Most of us will have a little better understanding about aliens and what's going on. But for the everyday American, for the everyday Earthling, I should say, this helps them understand that you can explore our galaxy without the need of advanced space travel. You can get, 2-year trips are nothing. When they used to cross the Atlantic to come to America, they'd get lost out there 2-3 years sometimes. Even at the very least, it'd take a year to get across. These are things that we can accommodate. We can carry those many supplies. We can put X amount of people on ships. We can accommodate those kind of fuel supplies. But no, we cannot put 200,000 people in space and accommodate it. It's impossible. So we have to use stepping stone theories, at least until either ET gives it to us or we figure out ourselves how to use wormhole technology or faster-than-light technologies, whatever comes first. Not sure what it's going to be. But it does allow us to leave our solar system. It allows us to leave and go explore other solar systems. There are literally, I think it's 140 other solar systems within 10 light years of our planet. 10 light years. That sounds like a lot. At half light speed, that takes 20 years. But if you've already been going from colony to colony to colony, no, it doesn't. You're going to be going from Proxima Centauri to Vega. It takes about 1.5 years. Boom, you're there. You're going from Vega to the next one, another 1.5 years. So that's the point. It's unfortunate that science likes to say, well, no, y'all cannot travel in space. It's going to take 500,000 years. Well, no, that's a lie. It won't. Even at NASA's estimations, at a quarter light speed, we can explore the entire solar system in less than 200,000 years. So we're planning on living, at least I'm hoping we are, for several hundred million to several billion years, which means we have the opportunity to not only explore this galaxy, but we have the opportunity to explore this galaxy at least 100 million times. That's a lot, guys. That means we can establish colonies all over the place. Let's look 20 million years into the human future and see where we are. 20 million years, we have colonies probably in every major solar system out there. Now, we'll be doing what the Greys are doing. Oh, let's go up top. Yeah, let's get even. The Greys have talked to us for 10,000 years. Let's go get in. which is something we're going to do. No reason to lie to ourselves. We'll be out there probing people and taking them against their wills, just like we do to animals and like we do humans here on our planet today. I don't see us changing that point of future. And I do think we'll try to keep it like the grazing humans. We'll probably try to keep ourselves somewhat anonymous, but we do make mistakes. But it's a point that people need to understand, because frankly, when I talk to people on a regular basis, they really don't understand that we can explore space. You know, like the other day when I was hearing the Emperor speak about our space program, I got a giggle. Well, we don't need to go to the moon. Well, yeah, we do. We have helium-3 on the moon. Yes, we need to go to the moon. It's a power source that a hungry planet for power needs. I don't know. You know, I'm not a major physicist, but still, I mean, come on. It's free energy. Well, it's not exactly free. We're going to build a ship to get there and back, but still, it's there. And I mean, it is there in an abundance. But yet, no, we're not interested in that. Well, we're going to go to Mars. Well, I want to go to Mars. Hell, I'd like to volunteer to go to Mars. But I would really like to see a base on the moon. I'd like to see a launching platform out in zone L11, which is something that I've talked to with several major physicists about, because it's the halfway point between us and Mars, which means we could send stuff from the moon to there in a matter of days, and then from there we need to send them to Mars or to anywhere in our solar system within a matter of a few months. And those are constructed programs for a space program. Building a little rocket that can hold 3 people and send them to Mars is a waste of all of our money. That's exactly what it is. You can't bring anything back. It's not going to do us any good, and it's not really going to help anybody that's alive today. If we're going to do this, we need to do it correctly. We need to put together we need to just go ahead and start sending stuff to Mars now. Large containers of products. Get them there, get them set up, and then just start shipping people, one after another, till you actually get a real colony. Then you can start addressing issues and getting into space. I don't think most people realize what is in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. There's enough minerals there that will supply this planet for the next 10 million years. They don't know for sure, but they think it was a planet about 5 times the size of Earth, and it is loaded. They found one nickel-iron asteroid, which on this planet is worth $109 billion. One. NASA estimates that there's probably 10,000 of these things floating. That's $1 trillion plus floating around out there. So these are things that we just don't want to talk about. But all of this is related to our good friends, because apparently the aliens aren't interested in any of this. They're not interested in the helium on the moon. They don't seem to care. Probably not a technology they need. They do seem to have a little fascination with Mars. But by the way, in case y'all didn't know, Mars does have a 24 3/4 hour day, or 24 1/4 hour day. And also, 58 million years ago, Mars' average temperature was 63 degrees, which happens to be the optimal temperature for us and the right body clock for us. So you got to wonder, what was that? Now, I'm not a big fan of coincidence. I'm not going to lie. I'm always been kind of, I don't really buy the coincidence thing. So I've asked many scientists about this, and they're all, well, Joe, no, that's not right. I said, well, hold on, I'll look it up for you. Well, I don't know, Joe. Don't make any sense. Well, I mean, we live on Earth. Our body clock should be 23 1/4 hour days, and our optimal body temperature should be 76.6 degrees, and it's not. And, of course, we know we've been here, at least in this form, for at least 10,000 years. Now, according to science, we've been here for 2 million. I would have thought somewhere by now we would have adjusted to this. Now, if we were a created species that's less than 20 or 30,000 years old, no, we would not. It takes several million years to adjust to this. So it's just more fuel to suggest that whatever created us was not native to this planet, and the race that's here today is still not native to this planet. The argument always has been, and probably will be for a long time, most of y'all are probably familiar with panspermia, building lots of brain dart here, creationism, God put us here, or the aliens did. Any way it goes, this race is not native to this planet. That's why I get so funny with my Gaia friends, because I say, well, why would Gaia love you? You don't belong here. You better go find a Gaia planet you're from. You want her to love you. I'm thinking, people need it, but most people don't think about these kinds of things. Touch how crazy I am. I really do. It's stuff that makes me nuts that is constantly running through my head. And fortunately for me, I have a bunch of directors and a bunch of research people that are always, Joe this, Joe that, Joe this, Joe that. Joe, no, that's not right, Joe. You lost your mind. Joe, that's not entirely right. Like I heard you mention Kathleen Baldwin. Kathleen and I are friends. I drive her insane, by the way. You'll find on my website the complete rebuttal of the Betty and Barney Hill case. Also, you'll find at the X conference in the lecture I did why Betty and Barney Hill were not abducted in the United States. It's a much better explanation for the case that went on. All the major researchers, including Richard Dolan, Graham Cameron, and the rest, agree with what I said. It's a very interesting thing, and I'll get more into it tomorrow. But basically, and I never did figure this out. I listened to the Hills case when I was a kid. I listened to it. I've got the actual original regression tapes, which Catherine freaked out when she found out. But I actually do have the original regression. I've actually played them on the air for people to hear. There's at one point when you're hearing Barney, you know there's something going on. I mean, because the terror comes across like you wouldn't believe. I mean, doesn't matter who you are, when you hear him, you can feel it. It's crawling up your back. You know something happened to that man right then and there. Can't argue that fact. What got me confused about this case early on was Barney said that they stayed in a hotel in Canada. Betty said the same thing, but they couldn't remember the name of the hotel. Okay, maybe you pulled in late at night, you didn't see the name of the hotel. Next morning, you had to check out. Still don't know the name of the hotel. Went across the street, had breakfast. Don't know where to have breakfast. Barney said they asked the policeman for directions. Betty said they asked the Irishman for directions. This is classic alien abduction, classic. Didn't know where they were, couldn't find the time, had no idea what was going on. They lost a whole day in Canada. A whole day. This is classic. 1960s, classic alien abduction. Never could figure out why this case got missed so much. The other thing that bothered me, they came to the United States, and 4 men with flares pulled them on the side of the road over and took them out. I have never, in 30 years of abduction research, heard any contactee tell me that 4 guys in black pants, black shirts, and black duckbill caps came and removed them from their car and brought them to a ship. Also, Betty talks about physical paperback books. That's a first in abduction cases. Paperback books. Not something you really hear about. Drawers that slide in and out. But more importantly, and this is what always bothered me, anybody who knows classic the disease control centers have a special thing they do if they think you've been exposed to something and they want to check you out. They'll come in and take scrapings, nail samples, skin samples, urine samples, but they take physical samples. Well, the greatest reptilians and humans use a different type of technology for doing stuff. Everything that they described that night is what we consider to be terrestrial technologies, not something the extraterrestrials use. It's a real hard thing. It drives Kathleen crazy, by the way. Even though she did admit that she thinks they were mill-edged from that point forward. She just, it's hard. You got 2 books out, you can't really go backwards. But everybody who's read this, and even Stanton, kind of just got off after we read it, because it really is a much more plausible and a much better explanation for what happened to the Hills.
So do you think it was military ops that got them in New Hampshire?
In New Hampshire, yes.
Yeah.
I think the actual physical alien abduction happened in Canada.
Yeah.
See, everybody got mad at me when I first came out. I said, wow, they're abducted. I said, well, why didn't you say they want to abduct these? I said, they got abducted in Canada in the military. For me, and Melinda Leslie kind of argues with me about this, but for me, they're really the true first MILAB case that we can really go back and say, damn, this was military. I mean, look at
She
this.
would argue with you on that.
Well, I'll tell you why she did. She had captured it. It just came out. You know, she's out on the circuit, just like everybody that's out there speaking, pushing this book. You can't stop her in the middle of pushing the book and rebut. You just can't. It's not good business for her, and I do understand her motives for this. So, but in the lecture that I did for X Conference last year, we actually go through page by page. The pages are actually listed in the lecture, so you can go back and see the discrepancies from the first book and the second book, from what Betty says in the first book and what Kathleen says. There's actual discrepancies in what's being said. And some of them is just stuff that just magically appears, so I'm not even sure where that came from. But there's several discrepancies. And then, anybody can do this, there's an audio place on the internet where you can go download all of the Hills archives from the 70s and listen to them for yourself. When you listen to Barney talk, there's no doubt that Barney was the contactee. He was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He was the one that was having psychological problems when he was growing up. He was the one that was seeing psychologists all the time. And his whole family seemed to have a disposition towards this. Betty was the one that always wanted to see a UFO. She actually admitted to that in 2 interviews. So for me, it seems like he was the true contactee. And in today's society, it's a little different because contactees have a tendency to find each other. So they're generally both contactees. Back then, it seemed to be a little bit more mixed. It seemed to be one was a contactee, one was not. Now, in Betty's case, I don't know if she was or she wasn't. I know for a fact that Barney was. In Betty's case, I'm still kind of skeptical about it because, like when she describes what's going on in the military abduction, they're really not doing her anything. Barney's the one they're really paying attention to. They've got him all locked up away, and in his dreams and in his regression, he's physically screaming. I mean, he's in terror, and she's not. She may be stronger constitution, stronger will than he is. I don't know. It's a tough call. Fear doesn't seem to really care if you're male or female. So she may have had a stronger constitution than he did, or maybe he was the one that everything was happening to, and she was just overseer or sightseer or whatever you want to look at. There's always one on the side back then. There always seemed to be one on the side. They would, like with Whitby and his wife, they would freeze her there and take him. And occasionally she may have glimpsed something or seen something, but still, she was not the contactee. He was the contactee. And I've actually talked to him about that as well. And these are important things because as ufologists and people working in the field, when you see a case there's obviously something wrong, it's our duty. We have to correct it. And one of the things I said in the lectures, why did I have to be the one after 44 years to correct this case? There's literally been 100 investigators look at this case. And I just couldn't believe the things that they just let slide because this was a staple case in ufology. Fine. But someone else is going to come along and say, well, no, this case was wrong, which makes us all look like idiots. So it's better for one of us to correct it because then at least they can say, well, the field is policing itself. They're taking care of themselves. All right, they're doing the right stuff. These are people we can actually respect for the information that they're giving to. This stuff is important because you can't just let errors keep going. And there's other cases along there. There's other cases that's really good, like the Allagash case, one of my all-time favorites. As far as I can see, there's nothing you can debunk about the Allagash case out. Or I should say the Allagash, the Shattuck Harbor case. As far as I can see, there is nothing you can debunk about Shattuck Harbor. The witnesses were excellent, and what really, really stands out about Shattuck Harbor is everybody said the same thing. An airplane went down in Shattuck Harbor. We didn't find out until later on it was a UFO. So no one even assumed that it was an alien craft. Everybody thought it was an airplane that went down. Added a lot more credibility to the case. I helped it out. Now we've had a couple of Navy witnesses come forward about what was seen in the water. So those kind of things help. So those are good staple cases people can go look at. Nobody's arguing about. But I don't know how many of you have been watching. Roswell seems to be highly contested now. There's a big debate going on about, actually, James Cameron started it, by the way. They tried to blame that on me, but I'm blaming it on James. They tried to blame, I got to be honest with you, about 5 years ago, or 6 years ago at the Crash Retrieval Conference, I gave a lecture on what possibly could be another explanation for Roswell. I said I didn't know because we were just exploring stuff. But James came out a little bit more hardcore about it, and of course that just sent everybody into a tizzy. Now everybody's discussing. My problem, I'll be honest with you, I have one problem with Roswell. As a Gray abductee researcher, I know the Grays are not going to leave their technology behind. I also know that their technology is seamless. Their ships are grown. They're a seamless technology. So you're not going to find little eye bars and stuff like that in the wreckage. Matter of fact, you shouldn't even find any wreckage. Either the ship should totally disintegrate or just impact into the ground. Because frankly, they can travel through time and space at speeds way excess, and even a particle could rip a ship apart. So they have to have some kind of deflector ship, or they have to have materials that it withstand impacts much stronger than crashing into our planet. So you can rule out that it was a Gray ship. Now, they said there were Grays present, so okay. Well, we can say it's not a Gray ship, but there was Grays present. How could that possibly be? Little short story, 1911 and 1913. Sorry about that. The Germans built 6 prototype saucers, 6 of them. The United States, from what I heard, retrieved all 6 of them. Now, this is stuff you can look up for yourself. A lot of people thought that they were just drawing these things. No, these were actually built, and yes, it has been made public. A lot of this information is public. So you can actually find these 6 ships. More than likely, what happened is we got our hands on one of them. The Gray said, look, we're not going to take it away from you because, frankly, it's not our technology. It just looks like ours, but we'll see if we can help you fly it. There's always been this thing. There's always been 2 crash sites. One crash site, there was something found intact. Sounds like an escape pod. The other crash site was a debris of debris. And what always bothered me is that the 2 Cub Scouts, the ones that went missing all of a sudden after they talked about this, they said the second site, they seen 4 or 5 bodies that were pinkish and kind of meltish looking. I don't know how many of y'all have seen a human body that's been exposed to high doses of radiation, but it's pretty much the same thing. The body turns an inverted pink and then it starts to kind of melt around the bones. It's a really disgusting thing to see, but the description that they gave is close to the same description. Now, the other description was definitely Greys. So that's what it really sounded like happened. They crashed the ship, the Greys ejected. They said, you dumb humans, you're on your own, which apparently didn't help them out either, because from what I've seen, most of them didn't make it either. But it would make sense why the Greys would have left the technology behind. If it wasn't theirs, they left it. But remember this, if the U.S. crashed an F-22 and F-35, even if we crashed in Russia or China, we would retreat. Y'all remember what happened with the spy plane? There was no way we would let the Chinese keep their plane, or our pilots for that matter. Frankly, the technology was too advanced to leave into their hands. Same thing with the Greys. They're not going to let us keep their technology. And frankly, the Greys, being more advanced than most of them, can just come in and take it out of your house like it's nothing to take it out of the military. So for me, it always has been, it's never bothered me that something crashed in Roswell, or in Corona, I should say. That's never been an issue for me, because things crash all the time. What crash was always the issue for me? What was it that actually crashed? Was it really an alien craft, or was it something that we got our hands on, that we reverse engineered, or the Germans reverse engineered? And of course, if you knew about Hitler, pretty much everything he did was in line with the extraterrestrials. The genetic experiments, the experiments on twins, this is all stuff we hear in abduction scenario on a regular basis. In his book, Montaldo, he talks about these human-looking aliens, or human-looking angels that used to come and talk to him and tell him what to do. In today's society, we would consider them to be like Palladians or something along those lines. Kind of nasty, if you ask me. If they were working with Hitler, you got to kind of go, all right, I want to be friends with you. I'll stick with the Greys. Even though they're kind of nasty, I'm going to stick with the Greys. So, but that's something we've been trying to get across to people. Here you have this human race that everybody has been saying for decades was here to save us, love us, and be kind to us. But the evidence doesn't bear fruit to that. The evidence suggests that they created us as a slave race, went to work with Hitler, worked with other races along the line, and the Egyptian texts and the Mesoamerican texts, they were very nasty, very evil type beings. And then the reptilians seem to be not so nasty and not so nice. Now, I asked the scientists about this. 88% of humans have an unnatural fear of reptiles. Why? How many of y'all have actually ever seen a reptile that you think's going to kill you or something? Now, I live in New Orleans where we had big alligators, okay? I mean, literally. After Katrina, they were swimming down Veterans Highway. But still, it's just what they are. But humans have an unnatural fear. A lot of humans will just clam up and become stiff when they get around something like that. Why? There's no reason for. We have a reptilian section in our brain. It's science fact. Why would we have a fear of reptiles? According to science, technically we evolved from them. So why would we have a fear of them?
They're a lot bigger.
Well, they're a lot bigger, but because the race that created us made us genetically, they inbred it into us to have a fear of. See, they wanted to rule through fear and intimidation. Reptilians, not so much. I don't think they want to rule us. Actually, to be honest with you, I don't think they really care any way it goes. I think that they're doing what they got to do, and they might make friends with some of us, they might like some of us, but so be it. They've got an agenda that they have to serve. And whatever that agenda may be. And in all fact, when you're doing experiments on animals, you don't want to get too friendly with them in case you got to put them down or do something that you're not going to like. So I do think in some of the cases that is why the aliens are kind of standoffish, because there are going to be times when they're going to do stuff that, frankly, you don't want to be attached with that individual when it happens. And I don't want to get everybody wrong, because they're not evil. Okay, people ask me all the time, are the aliens evil? Well, not the way we think of evil. They're not really good or evil. They're really not. They're more like, like the bumper sticker says, stuff happens. Since it's a G-rated, we'll say stuff happens. But really and truly, that's more or less what they are. They're not wanting to save us. They're not wanting to destroy us. They have to fix whatever it is that they're fixing. I've heard a lot of stories. Some people said that it was, they had lack of emotions, lack of this, lack of that, or size. Let me tell you what, the Greys are not trying to change themselves. They are probably the pinnacle of evolution compared to us. Anything that's 3 foot, if they come through here and drag us all out here and do whatever they want without any consequences, I don't think they're looking to evolve. And they do have emotions, so I don't think they're looking to change that. They just seem to have a better grip on it. But they are looking for something, or they wouldn't be here. At first I thought maybe, the reptilians and humans were fighting back and forth. Maybe they came to kind of be the overseers. And in some aspects, the Greys are the overseers. They do keep the peace between the two of them. but that's not what the agendas are. And what's another problem? There's not one agenda. There's at least 4 types of aliens abducting here. They all have primary agendas, and they all have sub-agendas. So when you really start getting into this, you start saying, okay, we have the breeding programs going on, we have Star Child programs going on, we have all these different hybrid programs going on, we have the reward and punishment programs going on, we have the technologies, telepathic technology things going on, we have the emotional stress things going on. These are a lot of things that are happening. So it's hard to really figure out what exactly it is they're looking for. They're not looking for all of this. Some of this is simply to learn. So what is it that they're looking for? Oh, where are we at? Oh, actually, I am sorry about that. I kind of... Uh-oh. All right, come on, let's slide. Actually, I wanted to show you all the pictures. I had brought some pictures with us of the different types of aliens.
That's what we want to see.
Including, if we get it to behave itself, including the different types of human, aliens that came along. Because it was working. We'll let it sit for a minute. We'll let the boss come mess with it. Actually, I was looking for those photos I had, and they're not the PowerPoint. Okay. But the reason I put those photos in, this is just PowerPoint that gives you a breakdown of who and what we are, what we do, what we're involved with, stuff like that. Actually, tomorrow, there's a copy of this I have in pamphlets. I'll just put it on the table. Y'all can take one. But it will be available that way. It's kind of a strange thing to see these types, and I know I'm getting short on time here, so I have to behave myself. That's fine. I'm going to go through. They can look at it. I was just looking. There's on that same. On here, there's some pictures on there. Okay. If you find it. But the reason I wanted to show you all those is it does show like some of the takes of the Egyptian hieroglyphs. It'll show you like the elongated heads. Versus, because at first you always see the long hats, and of course that's an assumption when you see the long hats. Well, just because they got big hats on their head, many have big heads. But there are actually several hundred illustrations where they show the head being big. Now, before we get all alien on this, there are other explanations for this. Inbreeding can cause a lot of problems. It's always bothered me on some of the things, like they said, how we got here, why we're here, because like the out of Africa theories always drove me crazy. There is no possible way for 2 humans to create a population of 6 billion. The genetic flaws would be so great that half the population would be, well, not good. One of the things you find with interbreeding is sometimes it increases the good in everything, sometimes everything is bad. So it really depends on where that is.
We're almost there.
Take your time. I ain't going over.
Is there a specific image you want to see?
Actually, no, I was just going to file through them. Well, there you go. You see that? Now, you see that's what everybody considers the typical human alien to look like, right? That's what I was taught when I was young. That was the human alien.
No, you can use your remote.
Oh, okay, thank you. But now I've learned. Well, he says I think he's tricking me.
Actually, it was going to work. Let's try this.
I don't think this thing's going to like me. If not, I'll use the. Oh, there it goes. You know what? Let me slide over here.
There's your.
We'll use the pad. Now, this is supposed to be male Palladians, which I always thought was kind of funny. Now, the stone thing is, I have heard about that on a bunch of occasions. They say it's some kind of device that just kind of numbs you out, mellows you out, and lets you go on your I guess, emotional way. Now, this is a pretty good depiction, with the exception of the wings.
Looks like the Mothman.
It does kind of. That kind of what the Mothman. Actually, it's a pretty good depiction of a reptilian minus the wings. They do have 5 fingers and 5 toes. It's hard to make out here, but there's like a dew claw on the back, and then there's one on the side, and something with the hand. But it's a good structural picture, but it's not perfect by any means. This is another one that gets close, but it's not perfect. But they do have a tendency to look like this. But you know what's always bothered me? Is they always describe all the aliens like you see on Star Trek. They're all like buff and good shape. Well, they're no fat aliens. I mean, I'm just kind of wondering. I mean, is that all they have? I see I have issues with that one. Because, some of them look like they're quite hungry. See, now this is coming from the Egyptian. Now you see that, what's it called? The stone is the one that brings life. It brings you knowledge and life. I forgot what they call it. The Egyptians actually worshipped them. They weren't scared of them. The Mesoamericans weren't scared of them. but they were scared of the humans. And it's one of those things that, we've just, and these of course, this one I think is about 5,000 years old actually. You find this all throughout ancient history. There's just no way to escape it. Unfortunately, now this is one of my favorites. As you can see, there's the raptor. Harvard did this, not this very long, but Harvard did one like this, that shows the evolution of an advanced species. The reason Harvard did this is, most of y'all I'm sure are aware there's been 1.1 billion years of life on Earth. And for us, we've only been here in this new evolution for 63 million years. Now, the reptilians ruled for about 350 million years. Now, if we evolved in less than 60 million years, it's physically impossible that an intelligent race did not evolve in this time frame. And even if it didn't involve that, it would have evolved in one of the other 6 billion years before that. 600 million years before that. Harvard agrees with this, so does Cambridge, by the way. It is impossible that another intelligent life form did not evolve on this planet prior to us. They don't like talking about it because it's not good for tenured professors, but they do stuff like this and other things to get their point across. Raptors were very intelligent. We know that now for a fact. They were extremely intelligent. No scientist today argues that they would have lived, they would have been the dominant force on this planet. They would have been an intelligent life form. So what they're saying is since the first dinosaur, which was 300 million years before this one was, more than likely something evolved. Of course, none of us were there to find that, but we do have the map of the Creator, which dates back to this time era, 120 million years ago. That's 60 million years before the extinction started, 60 million years prior to the Great Extinction. So these are things that we just can't get around because simply the math and the science is there for it. This one's kind of cute. He looks like a little kid. Is that a face a mother could love? No, that's it. Come get your kid. Let me go on, baby, who are you messing with? This is just kind of funny. By the way, this is a fake picture, so there's a bunch of these put out. The reason I like it is it kind of gives the right hue color to it, and the structure of the head and the face is fairly close. It's not perfect, mind you, but it's close. There's a group of these put out. I got these from a girl in Pensacola, Florida. She sent me 9 of them and said this was in her backyard. Okay, and I was like, okay, if you say so, sweetie. I was very polite, but still, I was having issues with it. And, you can see he's kind of translucent. There's a reason I like these pictures, because you can actually see the kind of translucentness to his skin. That's what grays are going to have. They're not going to be that gray color, that typical battleship gray that people want to call them. They're kind of translucent looking at, and like I said earlier, it depends on their feeding cycle, where they are in feeding cycle. This is true for the 3-foot grays and the 5 to 6-foot grays. The taller ones, it's not true for. We haven't figured out why it's not, but it's not. No one can put them in any of the plasma baths anywhere. Quick thing about the plasma baths, there was a bunch of people back in the 70s and 60s used to write about these tubs that they thought the aliens would put blood and body parts in to feed and absorb. That's not what they actually were. They were actually plasma baths. The plasma, this is what's funny about the plasma. This is a really useful tool. The graders use it for food. The ship uses it for fuel. And the ship is a self-replicating food supply for both the ship and the grader. What's also very interesting about it is they immerse the humans in it all the time. We started hearing about it. It all started over these weird color blues. People were like, man, I have this weird color blue. I've seen this weird color blue. I've seen this weird. No one could ever describe the color or why they were seeing the blue. Finally, we pre-programmed contactees sometimes to ask questions. We'll take 50 contactees, give them something we want to know, give it all to them, won't let them talk to you. Usually won't even let them know who they are. And we embed it in their head so when the next time they get abducted, it's automatic. As soon as they see that gray, they're asking telepathically, that question. And that was one of the questions, what was the blue? And they come to find out it was a blue plasma. Since then, they actually started remembering quite normally, but it's like anything else, you got to get it out there first. Oh, there's J-Rod. Y'all don't think J-Rod was real, huh? I'm not sure. Was he? I don't know. Sometimes I think, he's a puppet. Sometimes I'm like, who knows? It's the government. You never know. It just cracks me up, the expression. This I found interesting. This is also a fake photo. Now, the person that sent it to me swears it was real, but I did a little research on it. It's a fake photo. The reason I like this photo is because we have hybrids that look like this. Gray human hybrids. And I just found it interesting that this photo happened to pop up, but we really do have probably a couple of hundred descriptions of what we would call hybrids, 5 to 6 foot tall, sometimes with hair, sometimes not with hair, but they tend to have the features of both races. Now, in all fairness, I do not think the Greys are making them for themselves. So, also, while I'm thinking about this, because we're getting short on time, something we learned also early on with the Greys and some of the other races. Now, they swear this was a real photo, too, by the way. I don't think so. It's a good photo, but I don't think it's real. But I do like it because of the mouth itself. It actually shows the teeth, and it actually shows the eyelids of the Greys. Something people rarely ever talk about. But they do have it. They do have mouths, they do have teeth, and they do have eyelids over their eyes. Matter of fact, usually what you'll see, if you can look, let me see if I can move in for a second. Usually what you'll see around his eye right here, there'll usually be a black patch. It's they use it to enhance their vision. That's why they look like they have the big almond eyes. It's not actually an eye. Also, they have pupils that are very interesting color. We call this abduction criteria, by the way. It's one of the things we use to find out who is truly big contacted. They have about 3 different colors they use in their eyes. Their pupils are a lot different than ours. But when you're up close and in their face, you can see them quite well. And I mean quite well. So it's one of the first things we ask contacts. Well, what kind of eyes are they have? Well, they have big black almond eyes. Well, are you sure you've been abducted? Really? What color were they? Gray? Oh, I don't know. I've got issues now. And we started developing these criteria, frankly, because the amount of BS in the field was out of control. I do skate a lot of times. My directors give me trouble about this from time to time, about skating and my abduction criteria, which I will be doing tomorrow. We will get into a lot of the abduction criteria and a lot of the advanced abductions. Today was just kind of a little prelude for what was coming through tomorrow, but it is a very advanced course in alien abduction is what it really is. It's stuff we use for our directors. Now you can see here, you can see the elongated head in the face. He even kind of looks like a hybrid. He really does. He's got kind of a hybrid look to him. But like I said earlier, it doesn't prove beyond any reason that that's what was going on. Here's another one. You notice he's also got the stump. Oh, he's just cute. I put this in here. Now this is really true for the Greys. I have never met a Grey contactee that does not have their own form of writing. It's at first we thought, oh, the Greys are teaching a language to the contactees. Oh no. Each contactee has their own language. It's very advanced. Most of them will give you a key if you ask them. They'll make you a key for it. But it's their own, and you'll be amazed. They will write stuff in journals that way. They'll sew it into stuff. You will see it all over them, but I can't read it.
It's Arabic.
Well, different ones are going to look different ways. That's what's strange. Sometimes I'll hear stuff like pictures, stuff like that. Sometimes they'll say it's like hieroglyphs. Sometimes it's version of letters changed around, things like that. But all the Grey contactees have it. It's a strange and weird thing. This is what I was talking about earlier about the blue plasma dove. That is actually a representation of the blood dove, actually. If you look, you'll see that there's heads and skeletons and stuff like that. And the Greys are in there kind of having lunch. Not quite the truth, but, close enough. But it is what we call a blue plasma tank. And they do tend to use it a lot in contactees. Every contactee that's ever been in it is immersed. This is actually off of a temple in I can't remember. It's not in Egypt. I mean, it's in Egypt, but it's not in Cairo. It's in where was the bad guy? I can't think of it, but it's actually there, and it's in a couple other ones besides that. Now, if you look, you'll see in the drawing he's not wearing a hat, but he does have the head. This you will find on more than 1,000 hieroglyphs in Egypt. So this was a common thing in Egypt. This wasn't something that was a rarity. This was something that was common. Probably hybrids. Some people said maybe it was just aliens amongst us. It might have been because in the Sumerian times they did seem to move amongst us, and they may have in the early Egyptian times. Today's society, I don't blame them. I wouldn't have to hang out with them. Not that we're not nice people or anything, just frankly, we have a hard time getting along. This is one of my favorites, too. Getting along with each other. I like that because it gives a true representation of their fingers. Greys have really, really long fingers. It also gives a close depiction of their ships. Greys do use saucers. A long time ago, we put the aliens to each ship. Somebody, and I know y'all are all familiar with Greer and the Disclosed Project and things like that, where they said there was 56 different types of aliens. Well, you can rule that out. There's only 6 major types of aircraft. 6, that's it. In 10,000 years, that's all we can find is 6 types of craft. We don't count the little probe ones because we know the orbs and stuff like that are probes. But as far as the saucers, the triangles, the elongated saucers, the rectangles and those rounded ended rectangles, and the acorn and egg shape, which are all the predominant ones, that's all there is. There is nothing else. There's nothing else that you can find. Well, maybe half of them are coming over in those 6 ships, but the other half got their own ships, so why aren't we seeing them? Why don't we see these ships? So you can rule out, oh, God, that's definitely an ugly alien. We got to get off him, man. I'm scared. These are renderings from contactees. As you'll see, the grays look a little different. You can see a little differentness to the face. There's more design to their face. Their face isn't all smooth and plain like everybody thinks. We encourage all contactees to draw them because it gives us a better understanding of what they really look like. This is Mesoamerican. You can see he doesn't look threatened by the reptilians. He looks like he's having a conversation with that's the chief talking to one. But if it was a human, he would show fear. So I think, dang, he looks kind of cute. Hey, bud, how you doing? But these are things so people can get an understanding of what it is that they're looking for. None of these, by the way, are 100% accurate in any shape, form, or fashion. I got to be honest with you. We'll never put 100% accuracy in because I'm looking for specific things, and if I do this, it's too easy for people to lie to me or to lie to the other directors. You'll see these as well. You can't. I guess you can't see it's too small, but there's another one of the large heads in there, and one of the grays. It's in there as well. That was actually a an article that they did a full-page article with me and my wife about this particular thing. See, he's got that kind of translucent white color. That's the reason I put him in there. The 5 and 6 footers and the 7 footer grays, keep calling them gray. They really do. You'll find like a blue-gray, a white, and a brown in those sizes for some reason or another. At first I was thinking of different aliens. Oh, it's brown, it's white. No, come to find out it's all the same species. They just are different colors, which made sense to me since there's a variety of different colors of our own races. It actually made sense. At first it didn't, but after we got into it a while, I realized that yes, they are the same race. They're just different, diversities of the same race. It's kind of an interesting thing. But they're all in there. Now, I put him in there. It's not a true representation of the blue, but it's close enough that you would realize that it's not a gray. Any way you look at this face, you're not going to think it's gray. You're going to go, oh, no. Now, you'll find out that some of the more famous contactees like Whitley and Katerina and all of them talk about the blue aliens. They didn't until I started talking about it, but they do now. But they'll talk about it. And these are contactees that in one way or another have been verified. But we put them in there because we want people to get an idea that, like these two. These are put in there not because they're grays, by the way, because of how many children hybrid we have been told about on these ships. I cannot tell you how many mothers and how many fathers have been shown kids like this on board the ship that they said were theirs. Sometimes they got hair, sometimes they don't have hair. Some people get really upset about it, some people don't get upset about it. I have no idea how it affects different people in different ways. I guess it's your own way. Literally, a third or more, probably close to half of our contactees have talked about children on board these ships. Now, I got to say, the children they talk about now in 2010 seem to look a lot more like us than these guys do. But they still have like almond eyes and their hands are a little different and their arms are a little different. I'm not sure how you would merge a human bone body with a gray body that's colorless. And of course, I'm a lone human, so I'm not sure how they pull this off. But in their case, it is there. So we like to show this. Every now and then I'll get a contactee that, this is an old guy here. He's an oldie goldie. First person I've ever seen this that I talked to originally thought it was a reptile. Then somebody thought it was a human. It's actually a gray. It's one of the 7-foot grays. They're quite tall, they're quite big, and they can be very nice, very nasty, all in the same breath. It's a close depiction of what they are. Greys don't have that smooth body that everybody thinks they do. There's actually definition to their face. And there's more definition the older they are. My problem with it is how old are they? All the contactees we talk about say the Greys have been abducted in their family line since the start, which could be anywhere from 10,000 to a million years. One alien. How long do these guys live? It seems like, as far as I can tell, in human terms, they seem to have unlimited lifespan. I'm sure that there's some kind of limit to how long they live. But in our grand scheme of things, in our little 80 or 60 years that we get, see, look, man, they have a little soda and hanging out, have a little drink. Somebody needs to give them a little burger or something. But here you go again. This is another one in the Egyptians. You find so much of this in the Sumerian and Egyptian text that there is no way to escape it.
That one to me looks like what might be called an insectoid.
Yeah, it does.
Are they types of greys or are they a separate branch?
That is actually probably the little 3-foot greys that we call cyborgs. They tend to look a little different than the gray. I couldn't figure. People kept telling me they're these road-like greys. Road-like greys, man. And there's no, I'm telling you, there's roads on it. So, we looked more and more into it, and we found out that there was 2 types of the 3-footers. The other type, it's not all automaton, it's not all robot. It is partly alive, but it is partly machine. And they say their faces are more tilted, more slanted. A lot of people describe them kind of like praying mantises because they have these weird ridges on their arms. I don't know if they're not, if they are, but they do seem to be... they seem to be very pointed or whatever they're doing. They don't seem to slack off. Well, here we go. Oh, we already been through all these. Okay, good. One more quick thing, and I'll let y'all get. Oh, yeah. I like this one, huh? Now, I'm not sure who the alien is here. Okay, I'm thinking it's this guy over here. Might not be, but or maybe we got 2 different aliens here. But this is what they say. Truly, the human aliens look like. Not these pretty guys that we've seen. Let's go back a little bit. What's fast enough? Not these guys right here. This is what common lore will want you to think that the human aliens look like. This is what the research suggests that they look like. So it's a much different beast than what we're all being told and taught and trained. Not to say that there may not be flaws, and not to say they couldn't possibly be a hybrid. Can't ever rule out hybrids. Unfortunately, these days we can't rule out the hybrids. Yes, I see y'all telling me to get my butt off here. But I tell you what I'll do. Let me go. Oh, she's cute. Oh, I know him. It's oh, now I forgot his name. Don't see him before. Yeah, there you go. Everybody. There you go. Yeah. That was a pretty good flip, actually. I enjoyed it. Yeah,
Sorry what they call it racks.
Yeah, Josh, that's it. Now here you got. You notice in the picture. We're not going to say what they're doing. This is G-rated, but you do notice both of their heads are the same. These are all real hieroglyphs. None of this stuff is fake. None of this stuff can't be found on its own. I mean, I like to stick with stuff that I know people can go out and find with their own. Oh, here we go. He's standing by. All right, now we're good. We'll do that. But any questions? I know we're getting ready to get out of here. Anything you got missed or didn't cross? Really, this was a prelude because I did miss the Tallways. I wanted to talk about Charles Hall's Tallways. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with that. I really wanted to talk about the little brown guys. They've got a group out there. It's a rarity. We've probably got about 1,000 cases of this. There's these little brown guys, they say, that are probably 4 foot tall. Really, they look like old, just sprinkly, old-looking people. They call this a cleanup crew. Oh, yeah. They say that we're dinner. Okay. And I don't mean that you and I are dinner. It's whatever they're cleaning up happens to be dinner. Now, the first time I heard this, I'm like, whatever. Come on, y'all, get a grip. They're not flying all the way across the galaxy to have a human snack. I'm sure they could just take a few of us and do us like cattle somewhere. But the point was made to me, it's not so much about dinner or snacks, it's the fact that when particular things happen or particular things going on, these are the guys that do the cleanup. They're like any cleanup agency you could hire. I mean, the little brown guys they're the ones that you would actually hire to do the cleanup. They're the ones that are coming in and changing stuff or taking stuff away or disposing particular humans that are no longer useful to the program. This, we really literally do have 1,000 cases of this. It's a scary kind of thing, but they don't look like they're going out and intentionally doing it. It's like they're assigned. This family, that family, this individual, for whatever reason. I have no idea why. Now, it is a rare thing amongst contact Anyway, guys, anything else we did? Best.
Is there any history of abduction in ancient times, Sumerian times, or Egyptian?
Yeah, actually
Well,
there is.
there's Egyptian.
When you in the Sumerians talk about it a great deal. They talk about, especially with the reptilian humans coming in and taking their people. Sometimes for days, sometimes for months, sometimes for weeks on end. They would just take them and bring them back. A lot of times when they brought the women back, they were pregnant. The men had different attitudes than the women were pregnant.
Tomorrow, when you do your second talk, maybe you can spend some time on the difference between the reptile amphibians and the quote-unquote dragons.
You know, that's an interesting question, and I will. We'll address that some because it gets a really strange kind of scenario when you get into that. There does seem to be some relation, but anyway, we'll say that for more. What you got back here? Pat's fixing to kick me out. Great, you got one? Who's next?
Okay, we'll any more questions we can take after the law.
Okay, well, I'll catch y'all. Let Pat have his back. He said he's got to go home now.
All right.
Thank you.